Good noon hour to everyone here in Austin, Texas. Another really hot day here in Austin. I don't see any relief in sight in terms of some coolness or some rain, but we'll take what we get. All right, so welcome to our second Austin Home Live series. We're certainly glad you guys have joined us today. Our topic is home buying and needed updates. I'm Clay Simmons of Austin Sketch, and with me today is Melanie Price of Team Price Real Estate. We are so glad you've joined. Feel free and drop your comments and questions there within YouTube Live, and we'll do our best to get as many answered as possible today. So welcome, Melanie. Always great to reconnect with you. It's been several years. We were just talking about that you and I have worked together. I've always enjoyed working with you and getting your monthly marketing reports. They're always insightful. You've got a lot of great data. I'd love to kind of get the latest from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that's everyone's biggest question right now is how's the housing market? What's going on? Well, there's a lot going on. And I would say the largest contributors are going to be your interest rate, on top of your historical high prices and now inflation on top of everything else. So purchasing power is down and people finally just said no. I'm not paying $100,000 over list price. It just doesn't make sense anymore. So what started happening is that the way that people were pricing homes with comps, it just stopped mattering because what somebody paid last year, what somebody paid earlier this year is just not relevant anymore. Yeah. So price drops are currently happening on 49% of all of the homes. Whereas last year, 49% of homes had price increases. Well, that has completely flipped. And now sellers are like, oh, wait, did I miss it? Let me put my house on the market now.
Yes.
And now we have over 10,000 homes on the market, whereas in February we had like 2,400. So that has more than tripled.
Wow. That is huge. That is huge. And and really one of the reasons why I started this Austin Home Live was just due to the fact how dynamic this market is. I kind of feel like I'm living in Malibu, California, like 20 years ago when things were just like, all over the place. But it really is interesting to see how, and we talked about this in our last session, how we've moved from a beyond strong seller's market, like, just a stupid strong seller's market, to now a neutral market, I think, which is, and maybe, I don't know, maybe we're moving to a buyer's market. What's the latest from your side on that?
Right. So, I mean, we're still in a seller's market.
Okay.
So the last time we had this many homes on the market was 2018. And in 2018, we were still in a seller's market. Okay. There are some areas that are currently in a neutral market, and most of those areas are like the second home markets, like Spicewood, Lago Vista, Marble Falls. They have moved into a neutral market. Now things are moving in that direction. We're just not quite there yet.
Yeah. And I do recall in the .com, the 2001 to 2003, the financial crisis of 08 through 09, it always hits the outer rings first.
Correct.
And then it kind of, depending on what, how long the market impact is in terms of a decrease in demand and an increase of supply, how far it goes into the center rings of Austin. But clearly we're now seeing the outer rings, right? So that is kind of a leading indicator kind of as to where things are going. However, I just heard this morning, and I would love to get your take. The 30-year fixed has actually come down to the levels of April of this year, which we're going to have Clayton Porter with Star Lending on our next episode on the 18th. so he has all the numbers and how all of those models work. But I'd love to get your take as well, because I'm like trying to understand, how does the federal funds rate go up, which they just raised the rate, I think 0.75 of a point last week or the week before last, but yet 30-year fixed goes down. So it's kind of an interesting time right now.
Right. I think what's going on is a lot of lenders are eating more costs. So they're trying to keep it a little lower so more people will actually buy homes.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure he has way more insight than I do on the actual mortgage rates. But I think that's a big factor, is that mortgage applications are down so much and they still need business and people still need to buy homes. And right now the lending restrictions have gone up. They're just trying to like hold it together, is kind of what it feels like.
Super interesting. It really is. And maybe it's a nice window of opportunity here as we enter one of the most busiest times in real estate, as people are making their final decisions before school and all that stuff, to get a little bit of relief on that 30-year fixed. Well, listen, one of the things that we wanted to talk about, and this is something that I have experienced at Austin Sketch, is this whole remodeling for home buyers, right? And so we talked a little bit about remodeling as a seller, but we in the last series, but we didn't talk about from the perspective of the buyer. And I know one thing that I have seen at Austin Sketch is that new home buyers kind of are a lot like a customer at the Luby's cafeteria. Their eyes are huge. They want this, 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 and this. And then when we actually give them, estimates and quotes, and they actually run it, through their contractors, they're like, okay, we really just want a kitchen remodel or a master bath remodel or something like that. They really seem like they're unprepared, and I would love to just have a dialogue with you, because you do represent a ton of buyers. Like, what is their journey? What is your, I would say, advice when you see a home that they like, but it needs updates? Kind of help walk us through kind of that journey. And I would say there's probably going to be, obviously a lot more inventory now on the market for them to choose from, so they can probably be a little bit more selective as well. So I'd love to get your perspective on all this.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to know upfront what you're willing to get into and build your team first. So if you're going to do a remodel, get your contractors right away. Do it before you find a house. And that way, once you go under contract in your option period, you can bring in your contractor and see what it's going to cost. The thing is, whatever you're thinking in your mind, it's more. However much time you think it's going to take, it's going to be longer. The thing with remodel is when they start demoing and pulling things out, you're going to find some weird things that you didn't know were there, they didn't know were there. It's going to cost money. It's going to be additional time, things like that. So you need to know, what are you really willing to get into? Is it a kitchen remodel? Is it just floors and paint? Are you willing to do bathrooms? How long do you have until you have to move in the house? Or are you going to be doing this while you live in the house? There's a lot of factors at play there that definitely make those decisions up front before you get into buying the house and now you're stuck.
I love that. And honestly, I think that will really help the kind of deer in the headlights sort of I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Response when we actually provide the estimates. And by the way, you mentioned it really well. Go get with your contractors. Shameless plug here. If you don't have a contractor, we can come in, Austin Sketch can come in and basically build out your design ideas really quickly, and give you the plans and everything you need and say, okay, this is what we need. I'm going to send this to 5 or 10 contractors and get some bids, because you never know. In fact, I was just talking to a homeowner just last week. He was telling me that he's got a project. I won't name all the details, but he was telling me that about a $200,000 project with a swing of about $4. That's $40,000 between the two, so a total of $80,000 swing. That's huge. So it does add value to get your plans in and then get them out to bid, and we're happy to help you with that. Question for you: what are you looking at when you go to kind of pre-qualify? Previewing. What are you ignoring the homes that need updates? Are you saying, hey, this is still a great home, it's got some great bones, it would be super cool, if they updated it? How are you doing it?
Well, again, it's the conversation we have up front. Depending on what you're willing to spend on a home itself, what area are you looking in? What does your qualification even get you? So if you're like, okay, I have $800,000, but I want to be in Northwest Hills. Well, I mean, you're going to have to come up a little bit, and then it's going to be maybe not original, but it's going to be outdated. You're going to need new flooring. You're going to need paint. You're going to need kitchen, or is it something that you're willing to wait on? Like, I just want to get into the house and then we'll slowly update. So just always that conversation up front. And then when I go preview, I look for the things that you tell me you want. And sometimes I have to remind people, because I'll go to the homes, I'll make my notes, I'll tell them about it, and they'll be like, well, I really don't want this, this, and that. And I kind of have to bring them back to the initial conversation we had and be like, okay, these are the things you said were most important to you. So has that changed, or are we still here? So sometimes that has to happen. And if we're still here, then, hey, this is an amazing home for you. But yes, it's going to take some work. Got it.
That makes a lot of sense. So back to your example, if somebody wanted an $800,000 home, a budget, right? But, let's say it was, 4,000 square feet, something like that. And then you came across a home that needed updates, and it was in the neighborhood and it met it checked all the boxes, but, needed updates, still dealing with oak cabinets or something like this. But it was priced at $650K. Mm-hmm. Would it be a candidate, for your customer? And if so, then how would you navigate that versus one that's already ready to move in?
Right. Well, I would hope that they listened and have a contractor or Austin Sketch or somebody on the team, so that we can get the bids right away. Because the first thing you're going to want to do is schedule your inspection. Because the thing is, if the inspection comes back so bad that you're not willing to do, like, let's say it needs a brand new roof or foundation work or plumbing, like the sewage pipes or something like that, and you're like, no, I'm not on board for that, that's too much for me, then we don't have to go any further. But if it comes back clean or with things that you're willing to fix, then we need to get the contractor then right away. The next day if possible.
Yes. And when you and I were prepping for this call, I had a total aha moment that I don't even think I've thought even as a home buyer. And that is that, we earmark, what is it, a week, traditionally 2 weeks for an option period to get our inspection and get that report back. Is the market, or are you, suggesting, especially for homes that are needing updates, a little bit longer option period to get that inspection and also get those estimates in for those updates? Because once, one thing is the kind of the inspection, right? How's your roof? How's your electrical? All the stuff that we just assume is good, but 9 times out of 10 we find there's problems. And then there's kind of the surface things that, how much is a kitchen update? How much is a master bedroom remodel, or how much is knocking down that wall to or building a new wall to form 2 office spaces.
Mm-hmm.
People starting to earmark, or a good idea? What's your thoughts on that?
So the option period length of is going to be dependent on the market you're in. So pre-2020, you were looking at a 7-day option period. And then the crazy market hit and you were looking at 3 to 5 days. So you had to move fast.
Got it.
Now we're getting back to like the 7-day. And it depends on the house. It depends on the area. I mean, if the house has been sitting on the market for a while and nobody wants it, then you have more leverage. If it's still newer on the market, then you're still looking at like the 7-day.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So we are seeing a little bit more relief in terms of time that people need to make good decisions in home buying. That's actually a good thing.
I agree.
Yeah. So very cool. How do you, when the as a seller's agent, kind of going back to a seller's agent, how do you manage the conversations with the sellers on better preparing their homes, especially the ones that you see probably need updating? Are you like, hey, let's get this thing updated and then come and see me? And hey, let's get it on now while the interest rates are still low, and let's price it competitively and work with the future buyer on the updates. What are you seeing?
So right now, because things have changed so quickly and we don't know what the future brings, I mean, people have an idea of where it's going and it doesn't look too pretty. So if you're going to sell, I recommend selling now and pricing aggressively.
Okay.
So if you take 2-3 months to pour a bunch of money and updates into the home, but then the market bottoms out or something happens like that, then you're stuck in that home with all the money that you poured into it, right? Yeah. So I hope you enjoy those updates because you might be there for a while.
Got it. I think that's smart. I really do. I think that capitalize on a still a strong market now.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, where the market is going. I think there's still quite a bit of demand coming into Austin in terms of businesses that continue to come in and growth of existing businesses here that continue to grow, which ultimately is going to continue to drive more people into this area, which ultimately creates higher demand for real estate. But at the same time, we've all seen the 2001 to 2003, we've all seen the 07 to 09, where I wouldn't say it was like a Las Vegas, or some of the other places that got hit really hard. It usually is just a ripple. And it usually probably doesn't last any longer than, what would you say, 12 to 24 months. And then we're back to a super hot market again.
I think the concern there is, one, you're trading the known for the unknown. So we know where we stand today. We don't know where we stand in the future. The other thing that we have to take into account is how much prices went up and how quickly compared to history, right? Yes. So we had 3 to 7% average appreciation year over year. And then we went to, 35 to 40% year over year recently. Yes. So we don't know how much prices are going to come down this time. They already are. Yeah. Slightly here and there. And again, depending on the area and how expensive it is, because there's $100,000 price drops happening.
Yeah.
So
It makes perfect
It's tough
sense.
to say, but we know what's going on today.
Right, right. And we know we're getting a little bit of relief from the 30-year right now, so that's
Yes.
a good thing. Um, I wanted to talk with you about the options that a buyer has when they go ahead and move forward with the decision of buying a house that needs updating. We talked, Melanie, in the last series about the seller has a little bit of an upper hand than the buyer, in terms of the remodel, simply because the seller, assuming that they've had the home for a while, the seller has built some equity in their property, and the loan to value ratio is quite high for them. And so they can easily pull a HELOC and do those updates as a seller and still have lots of equity, in the home. And they can do some really good remodels to where they can get those, that value back out. Um, but it's not so much the case for the buyer. I'd love to get your point of view. What, as a buyer, what are my options? If I find a house that I really like, the bones are, and the neighborhood is exactly, again, checking all the boxes, but it needs updates. I mean, it has just not been updated. I'm dealing with a seller that, still is, 12 months behind the time they think they can get top dollar. What are options for a home buyer in those situations?
Right. Well, I mean, the first thing would be is, do they have the money to put into it or not? Because you're going to go after price either way. Asking a seller to update before they purchase the home, that's not really an option, because if they were going to do it, they would have done it.
Got it.
So you're going to go in and you're going to be aggressive on price, or maybe try to get some money back in closing cost concessions from the seller so that you can keep some of your money to then later put into the remodel. But it's going to be, if you're really stuck on this location and this is the most that you can pay for it and that's all your money, maybe you need to start looking in other places, because that might not be your number one. But it sounds like some of these buyers are probably also not selling a home and then getting equity from that, because most buyers that are selling and buying, they have a huge chunk right now as well to move into the next house and use that money for that, be it a pool or a complete renovation. Now, first-time home buyers or people who don't currently own a home, they're going to come across that problem where they want the world. They want the dream
Yes.
home. They want the first home to be the
Yes.
dream home. And we have to have that heart to heart. This is your starter home. You
Yeah.
start here, you build your equity. The next home can be the dream home.
Yeah.
So.
Got it. No, that makes perfect sense. So, and I do think, and you had mentioned that it really is, about that home buyer's budget, and it kind of goes back to that. And if a seller is still pretty high priced, you mentioned concessions.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work today? Do they give me like an example of how a concession would work? I mean, like all the nuts and bolts, and would literally the buyer get issued like a check of cash at closing to go and begin doing those projects?
Right. The way it works is it's negotiated within the contract, generally not up front, because you want to get under contract first.
Okay.
And then in the option period, that's where you negotiate concessions or lowering the list price. Once you know everything that needs to go into the house and how much it's going to cost you, then you can go back to the seller and say, hey, it's going to cost me $50,000 and I need the price reduced 20, and I want to get another 15,000 towards my closing costs. So at closing, the seller is paying that portion of the buyer's closing costs.
Okay.
And so the buyer in turn keeps that like $15,000. The lender has to approve it. So the first thing as a buyer's agent is to ask the lender, how much are the closing costs? Because you can't get more than that. It can't go towards the down payment or anything else. So you definitely need to have that conversation up front before you ask for anything. So if you do have to lower the price as well and kind of split it across both avenues, then you know that.
Yeah. And by the way, I just have to give you guys props at Team Price. I've worked with you and Dan on several occasions in terms of navigating contracts. You guys are awesome on navigate contracts, especially when you're under contract. So just a shameless plug to Melanie and the Team Price real estate group, Dan Price there. These guys really know how to represent you in terms of managing those little contract details so that you can get some cash back out and get those updates started. Because everybody wants to, especially a used home, everybody's got something they want to do when they first move in. They always have something that they want to do.
Yeah, even a brand new home.
Interesting. That I would hate to see that because obviously, people are yanking carpet and all that stuff. But I guess you see it more than I do for sure.
Well, so even personally, it depends on how much you want to spend on the home, right? So I bought a D.R. Horton home and they put the same thing in every home. Well, the day I closed, I called my contractor and I said, come tear out all these floors. They're hideous. I hate them. I want them gone. And I spent another 15 grand on putting new floors in the house.
That is a whole nother session right there. All the waste going into a production home that is going to be updated, immediately within like 2 minutes of a homeowner signing the contract. Well, listen, I've got it. We'll jump into some Q&A here. We've got some questions coming in. And for those that are online, if you've got any questions, please, now's the time to start presenting those, and we'll start going through those and answer them as much as we can. There's a couple of them coming in already. But Melanie, I wanted to ask you, give me some examples of some home sales that worked out nicely, because the home was ready for sale and then might not have worked out as expected because the home really just wasn't ready. It just didn't meet the expectations of the buyer. Any examples there?
So, well, am I listing side or buying side or both?
The buying side.
Buying side?
Yeah. Any buying side examples?
Yeah, I have one. It was the worst. So it was a remodel. Somebody tried to flip this home, but they didn't realize how much it was going to cost, I'm assuming, because they did a really shoddy job. So the pictures look great. You walk through it, it looks fine. The inspector comes in and, I mean, not just the roof and the foundation, but even the way they put the plumbing fixtures on and the way they did the floors, it was a mess. It was a huge mess. But this is why you get inspections done, and you do it right away in the option period. So you still have the unrestricted right to terminate the contract, and you just lose your option money, which in this case I think was $500. But you get your earnest money back, which is like your $5,000. And you just move on to the next home. And you're in it for about $800 at that point, but you didn't buy that awful home that probably needed $35,000 worth of work.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. It sounds like you've had a pretty good track record with not a whole lot of setbacks there, but I think as inventory becomes, more volume, in terms of, because we haven't had a whole lot of inventory on the market. Now we're starting to get some more volume in terms of inventory. We might see some more situations to where yeah, it's really important to go ahead and take that additional option period. After all, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's negotiable. Go ahead and
It is.
ask for a little bit longer option period, because I think the buyer is going to have a little bit more leverage today than they had 12 months ago, to make that happen. So
Absolutely. Way more.
awesome. Well, we've got a couple of questions here. So one from Jerry Cox, I'll just read it out. What exactly does Austin Sketch do? And what is process and how long will it take for Austin Sketch to give me a kitchen remodel plan I can take to a contractor? Okay, so yeah, I mean, honestly, I try really hard not to make this this forum a huge pitch for Austin Sketch, but I'll tell you a little bit about what we do. So we are an e-design company, so we work directly with all the players for the most part of the real estate market. So that's the real estate agents, that's the contractors, that is the designers, and that's obviously the homeowners. And what we do is we're a lot like architects are to new construction. We're an e-design company to do remodels and updates for mostly existing. However, we do new construction for like mother-in-law homes, patio or pool houses, cabanas, and things like this. We provide 3D modeling so that people can walk through the space and see what it's going to look like, what their vision is going to look like, how it's going to be realized. And we also provide floor plans and elevations, even sectionals, so they can take those plans forward to their contractors. Contractors use our plans. They're all to scale to basically build from. We can also use those plans to submit to HOAs, City of Austin permitting, and other like that. So again, we're really trying to enable the homeowner and the contractor, or the homeowner and the designer, to really bridge that of is the contractor really understanding what the homeowner wants? Is the designer really understanding what the homeowner wants? And then when we build out these 3D models, they really come to life. Melanie, you're very familiar with the property that we did in Spicewood. All of that was done using 3D modeling there on the Blue Mountains River, and it turned out quite nice, I think. If you recall, and I know you walked that property. We've got another question. Realtors quite often advise or recommend updates to sellers. Do realtors use Austin Sketch to assist sellers for recommended updates? Most sellers don't know where to turn. If not, why not? I think this is more of a question for you, Melanie, if your thoughts on this question.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's a great place to start, is with Austin Sketch and their designers and things, because you don't want to spend a lot of money updating a home because this is what you like. You want to update to what buyers like. So that's something that I have seen, and I do my best to direct clients, but they don't always listen. So when I say, hey, okay, you need to replace the floors, and I even send pictures, I'm like, it needs to look like this. This is what buyers want. And then you turn around, you're like, oh, I did my floors and they're this dark espresso. And why? Nobody wants that anymore. This is what you wanted, but you need to update your home for the buyers. So getting like the interior decorator and Austin Sketch involved is great, because they can tell you like, hey, this is what's going on right now. This is the trend. Or are you still going to live in the house for a while? Because then you don't want to go too trendy, because that trend might be outdated by the time you sell.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I appreciate that. And we're happy to help. That's our goal, is just to work, with the owner and the various, players involved, just to make sure that the ideas are being confirmed and ultimately realized based on the expectations of what the buyers want or the homeowner wants as well. Very good. Well, those are the only two questions that we had now. Any final thoughts, Melanie, before we wrap up today?
I think the best thing that anyone can do is to have a team. Have a team of professionals that know their craft, that can work with you together and just guide you through the process to get you to where you want to be.
That's awesome. And I think that is a great way to end it today. I just want to thank everybody for coming out to our second Austin Home live stream. Always a lot of fun and very insightful. And we look forward to hosting these on the first Thursday of every month. Our next Austin Home Live will be the 18th with the topic navigating rising mortgage and HELOC rates with Clayton Porter Star Lending. In the spirit of community, if you would like to see a specific topic, please let us know, and we'd be happy to add to our list. I want to thank our guest today, Melanie Price of Team Price Real Estate. As you've heard and as I know firsthand, Melanie is quite astute when it comes to current Austin market conditions. It's always great to have someone as knowledgeable as Melanie representing you. My name is Clay Simmons with Austin Sketch. We are a 3D modeling and e-design company. Our motto is see it before you build it. And we'd be happy to help you visualize and plan your next remodeling and construction projects. Again, thanks for tuning in today. We look forward to seeing you back August 18th.